Now we welcome once again to our Newsmaker segment on Live at 5, Samantha Chadwick. She's a preservation advocate with Environment Minnesota. Samantha, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Haven't had a chance to talk to you much this summer, and I know it's been a very busy one. You folks have been watching lots of things happening, including the horrific BP deepwater spill in the Gulf this year.
Yeah.
But also, one of the items that you brought to our attention is that Minnesota's national park areas are under threat from underfunding at the national level, of course. Tell us a little bit about this. What are we looking at here?
Sure. Well, we released a report a couple of weeks ago where we analyzed just the results from the last couple of years. And we saw that more and more people in Minnesota and then across the country are visiting our great national park sites. And, I think we're familiar with that in the time of a recession and economic hardship. People take more vacations closer to home. I think people stay nearby and, get outdoors, perhaps instead of taking a different kind of trip, flying somewhere. Sure. And really some people are just rediscovering these great assets that we have in our own state or in neighboring states. So that's a piece of good news, and I wanted to tell you more just about what we have in Minnesota for national parks. Yeah, and then also what we're looking at for the budget problem.
Yeah, let's remind people in the state of Minnesota, we sometimes confuse what's national and what's state park system.
Right. Well, we have so many great state parks and state forests too.
Yeah, but nationally, what are the parks that we're looking at?
Yeah, well, so the one national park proper that we have is Voyageurs National Park.
It's a beautiful park.
Yeah, it is. It's known as the premier water-based park in the nation. It's mostly water, and so it's a place where visitors go and they get onto a boat and they experience these huge lakes up in the lake country of Minnesota, bordering on Canada, which has a ton of history as well from the the native people and then the Europeans from the fur trade that first settled into the region. And so that is a really amazing place that we have. And it's complemented up in the Northland by Grand Portage, which is a national monument. So that's part of the national park system.
Mm-hmm.
And Grand Portage is a gathering place where the voyageurs who traveled up in that area and did their fur trades each year, where they would gather and have company parties and socialize each year at the beginning and end of their route. I visited that area for the first time this fall, and it was pretty neat.
It is, isn't it? It's an amazing amount of history there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then this actually is very interesting. In 2010 so far, the year's not even done, and Grand Portage has reported 40,000 more visitors this year than last.
Oh, that many?
Yeah, it's
wow.
They're pretty shocking to them too. They're very excited. One of the reasons is they just a couple of years ago built a new, I think it's called a Heritage Center, but a really great new area with information and a visitor center. That's just a great display. They actually were able to get some additional construction funds to be able to do that, and construction funds are one of the places where some parks are looking at cuts next year. Yeah.
That's not what we really need at this time when we're using our park system even more.
I would agree. Yeah.
That's sad to learn. Now, what are some of the other areas we're talking about here?
Yeah, a couple of the other really great parks, national park sites we have in Minnesota are around our rivers. So both the Mississippi and the St. Croix rivers are part of a national park system, either as a scenic riverway or a national riverway. And those are just miles and miles of protected river shorelines that people can go to for hiking and biking. There's miles of bike trails along the rivers. And then there's a ton of canoeing and boating that takes place along the rivers too. One of the great perks of that, is a lot of the population of the state living right in the major metro areas. That's very close to the Mississippi and the St. Croix.
Yes.
So it really can connect people from the cities and especially youth who need to be brought up with a good connection to the outdoors. It's very close for them to get out and do canoeing on the river and experience the outdoors that way.
So what we're seeing here is the federal government saying we're not going to put as much money into maintenance. Fewer rangers, I understand, will be hired. Be cutting back on programs. We're short at the federal level, we understand, for money, but these are going to be pretty painful, right?
Yeah, they could be, and I think the picture is different depending on the parks. And many of our parks have done a very good job, even throughout their history, in battling with chronic underfunding, which has been the situation all along. But it's we shouldn't be adding to the backlog. We should be getting parks the resources they need to just be as good this year as 100 years from now. Definitely, some could experience cuts, and what that means for each park is different. If the Park Service operating budget is cut, it could mean fewer programs, fewer park rangers. It could be, depending on the park, painful.
Now, Environment Minnesota is, of course, a statewide citizen-based environmental organization. What are you folks doing, and how can we help?
Well, a couple of the things that we are hoping to see that could help increase or just give the national parks, a better outlook to next year. Unfortunately, the president's requested budget for the Park Service is where we could see these cuts across the country and in some of the sites here in Minnesota. We hope that does not actually happen. Congress has the chance to, in the lame duck session here coming up, fund the Park Service at a higher level, and we definitely hope that they'll do that so we're not continuing to add to what's already a backlog of projects for the parks, but giving them more funding. That's one way, is just make sure the Park Service budget is funded. And then one other important thing that we may see, there's another stream of money that it goes to our parks. It's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Okay.
And it's intended to be funded every year at the full level, which means that national parks across the country could do land acquisition to add to their parks. One thing that threatens many of our parks is the existence of private land holdings within the parks that can be then subject to inappropriate development within a national park. If you think of some of the great ones across the country, Acadia Park in Maine has this problem. People have historic homes in the park. Many of them are actually willing to sell that land back now so that it can be incorporated into the park, but the parks often lack the budget to acquire the land and integrate it into the park. We know that if the Land and Water Conservation Fund were fully funded as intended and not rated like it is every year in the budget process, parks like Voyagers could buy back some of that private land from willing landholders as well, and preserve more of the park within its borders.
That makes a lot of sense, and let's hope that kind of thing begins to happen. Now, I understand that Klobuchar and Franken are committed to the parks, but are they working to persuade their colleagues to help with this funding question?
I think that's something we can definitely ask them to do. We know that Senator Klobuchar is signed on as a co-sponsor to the bill that would help fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund to the full extent. So that's excellent. We want to thank her and then encourage her, and definitely Franken, I think, can get on board too. Make sure that does come up in the next few months, and we do see that pass before the end of the year.
Okay. Let me remind our listeners that if you're interested in further information, you can simply go to Environment Minnesota's website. It's as simple as that, environmentminnesota.org. And there you will find lots of very educational material. And this report that we're talking about with Samantha is there as well, and lots of her comments and comments from Environment Minnesota as to what we as citizens here of this great state can do to help with some of these underfunding questions and the serious threat to our national parks here in our area. That would be very sad to see a deterioration of those parks at this point.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to see that. I think I encourage you to weigh in with all your leaders. Certainly our senators might have the opportunity to do something this fall. But keep getting out to these sites, enjoy them. Our parks do a great job of having excellent places to visit, no matter their budget. So go and visit them, and then certainly ask our leaders to give them the resources they need.
You know, one of the other things I was just thinking about is some of these parks are used a lot year-round in our state with the snowmobiling and everything else that goes on through the winter months. Yeah,
no, we don't shy away from the outdoors in the winter here.
No, that's for sure. Well, Samantha, we've run out of time again tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. She is with Environment Minnesota. It's Samantha Chadwick, She is a preservation advocate, and we'll have you again back very soon. Samantha, thank you.